Hello guys and welcome to another episode of my skill system series. In the last episode we left off with all of our stats basically working. We can hit plus and minus to or increase our mana currently. And in this episode we are going to add two extra features, one being regeneration for our stats, so for health and mana in this case, and the other one is making our increase or decrease of a stat more interesting by adding some animations for that. Alright, so let's start with doing the regeneration. So we'll go to our blueprints, characters, skill character, and in here let's add a new function called mana regen tick. What we're going to do in here is we will just modify stat. The stat will be mana, animated will be set to be false, and we have to find out the value for this. To do that, let's get stat, mana, and break that. In our break stat data, the only three values that we want to show is the max value and the time to reg max value, as well as the reg interval. All the other pins we don't need. And to find out the amount our stat is modified by, what we want to do is get our max value and let's convert that to a float. Then we will multiply that, so float times float, and we will multiply that by our reg interval divided by the time to reg max value. Then we'll plug that in for our buy and it will automatically be truncated. After we modified our stat, let's return, and then we will select mana regen tick, duplicate that and call it health regen tick, because that will work exactly the same way. Only thing to change is the stat here, that will be health, and here that will be health. I think in our mana regen function I didn't change that to be mana, so I'll do that quickly. Compile and save. Then let's go into our stats map, expand that, go to our health, and we will check has regeneration. Set the time to reg max value to 60 seconds, so we will need 1 minute to regenerate our full amount of HP. The reg interval can be something like 0.5 seconds. So to reg our max value we will need 120 ticks, and then we will also type in the reg function name, so this will be health regen tick. Make sure that you don't misspell that, otherwise the whole system will not work. Then go to mana, also check the has regeneration here, and we will keep the default values 45 seconds and 0.4 seconds. Then only type in mana regen tick for the function name and hit enter. Let's go to our event graph, and maybe up here we will add a custom event called setup stat regenerations. And what we want to do here essentially is to cycle through all of our stats, check which of the stats has a regeneration, and if the stat has one we will start a timer. To cycle through all the elements we will drag in our map, then call keys, so you get all of the keys, and let's run a for each loop. Then off of the array element we can just get the stat associated with that and break it. Here we only want to see the reg function name and the reg interval. And to start a timer we will search for set timer by function name. Object to execute that is self. The time will be the reg interval and the function name will be reg function name. One thing I forgot is we need to show the has regeneration and add a branch for that. And only if it's true we want to set the timer. Also check the looping, otherwise we will only do our tick event once. And now maybe you remember that from the last video we have our regeneration timer included in the stat data that we now want to set. So off of the get stat we will search for set members in s_stat data. Then right click, restore all pins, go to the regeneration timer, remove all other pins, and plug in the return value of our call here. Then we will call set stat value. New value will be the returned struct out, and the stat will come from our for each loop array element. Let's add a comment box around this one. Set up the timers for stats that feature regeneration. Give that a color here, something like a blue. And on event begin play, after we set up the stat bars, maybe before we update all the stats, let's call setup stat regenerations. Okay, so now our timers would be firing. Problem here is that our tick functions will still be called even when we are full HP, full mana, and on the one hand that's completely unnecessary, and on the other hand it's more performant to pause those timers when they are not needed. So we will create a function for that, which is called handle regeneration. It will have one input of the type e_stats, which will be the stat, and then we want to get that stat, break it. We want to see the max value, current value, and the timer. All other things we don't need. First thing we want to do here is check whether our regeneration timer is paused. Is timer paused by handle? And whether our current value is not equal to our max value. Add that to the end, add a condition, so branch. So this means if our timer is paused, but our current value is not our max value, so we don't have full HP, for example, that means that we will have to unpause the timer or resume it. To do this, drag off of the regeneration timer and search for unpause timer by handle. If that is not true, however, we will go into another branch. We will check whether the timer is not paused, so search for not, use the not boolean, and whether the current value equals max value, connect that to the end and to the condition. So if our timer is playing but our current value is the max value, then we can pause it. So off of the timer, search for pause timer by handle, connect that to the true, and if that's also false, we can just return, add a return node to the other branches as well. That should be it. We can close that function, and in our event graph, in the setup stat regenerations, after we set the stat value here, we also want to call handle regeneration for the stat that we're currently looking at, so the array element. Basically what this will do is if we start our game with full HP, the timer here will be spawned basically, or created, but it will directly be paused because we don't need it to play. Then we will go to modify stat, and before we update the stat, but after we set the stat value, we will also handle regeneration for the local stat. And we should be able to test this. So let's hit play, and if I hit minus, you will see that our mana regeneration starts playing. But if I reset my mana back to 200, it will stop. Same thing will be done to our health. Let's go to our event graph, and plus and minus will now affect the health. So let's see, if I hit minus, our regeneration starts, and every 0.5 seconds 2 health points will be regenerated. You can change those values by adjusting our time to reg max value and the reg interval. Now let's talk about how to add the animations to our stats. First off, let's add a variable called stats lerp data, which will be a map again. The key value here will be a stat, so e_stats, and the value will be a stat lerp s_stat lerp. Then compile, and we don't want to add any elements to that yet. Then let's add a function on stat lerp start. So when we start the animation of a stat, give that one input of the type eStats called stat, which stat is animated. Then we will get stat of our inStat, set members, restore all structure pins, and go to currently animated, then remove all other pins. So if we start animating stat, we want to check this, and then set stat value, connect the stat from our input, connect the returned structure. Afterwards return. Then let's duplicate that function for onStat lerp end. And here let's restore all structure pins and remove everything but the currently animated and the displayed value. So I'll just very quickly do this. And let's also break our stat. We want to see the current value. So plug in the current value for the displayed value and uncheck currently animated. Then set the stat value. Also, when we break it, let's see the bar widget. We want to get the remove bar, get stat remove bar, and set visibility to hidden. Then compile and save. That's it for our two functions. Go to our event graph and up here add custom event called lerp stat display. Give that 3 inputs. First a stat called stat, then a float called lerp time or duration, just the time that our animation will take, and a boolean called in positive question mark boolean. This will define in which direction the animation will play. So if we lose health, our bar will be animated to the left side, and if not, to the right side. First thing, we will call onStat lerp start for the inStat. Then drag in our stats lerp data and add an element. The stat is the stat from our input, and it's asking for a value, so we will make a stat lerp. Let's connect the in positive to positive and get stat. Stat being the one from our input node again. We want to break that, worry about the current and displayed value, as well as the bar widget. Alright, so the displayed value will be the original value, and the value to lerp to will be our current value, converted to a float. Alright, after we edit this, we want to get our bar widget of the stat, get the dynamic material, and we want to set scalar parameter value. For the parameter name, we will use a select node, and the index will be the in positive boolean. If false, the name will be %left. You might remember that when we set up the material in episode 1. And if true, it will be %right, obviously. The value here will be our current value divided by, so let's convert that to a float first, and then divided by the max value that we first want to show, converted to a float. And plug that in for the value. Compile and save. Then off of our bar widget, get the stat remove bar and set visibility to self-hit test invisible. Now we're coming to the only thing that I think is a bit inconvenient with this stat setup, because if you want to animate, let's say 2 or 3 stats simultaneously, you need a timeline for each stat. So what we want to do here is add timeline, and let's call that the HP timeline. And then we want to copy and paste this twice and rename this one to mana timeline and the last one to exp timeline. And you would have to add timelines for all other stats that you have. Just move them over, we will deal with them in a bit. After we set the visibility here, let's expand the components and get all of our timelines. So HP, mana, and EXP. Then we will look for a select node. Index will be the in stat. And we will connect the timelines associated with the stat. For now, we don't have a timeline. Connect HP to health, mana timeline to mana, EXP timeline to experience. And off of the return value, we want to set timeline length to the in lerp time. Afterwards, let's drag off of our stat from the input node once again and switch on eStats. And what we want to do is play the associated timeline from start. So health will go into play from start of our HP timeline, mana to the mana timeline, and experience to the XP timeline. On finish of all of our timelines, we will call onStatLerpAnd with the proper stat. So HP timeline will finish health, mana timeline, obviously mana, and EXP experience. Then we need another function, and that is StatLerpTick, which will again have an input called stat, which is an e_stats. And here what we want to do is get our lerp data, find stat, break that, and then we want to call a function called lerp float. A will be the original value, B the value to lerp to, and for the alpha we will need to drag off of our stat and call select, then drag in our timeline once again, and we have to connect them again. So HP will be health, EXP experience, mana will be mana. So the alpha will be the playback position of our timeline divided by the length of the timeline. Basically the percentage of our timeline that was already played. Then plug that in for the alpha. And we want to call getStat off of the stat from the input. Set members. Restore all the pins. Go to displayed value and remove all other pins. Then plug in the lerp for the displayed value. Connect the execution. Set stat value. Where is it? Here. Stat comes from the input. New value will be the return value of the node before. Then let's break our getStat, and we want to see our bar widget. Then off of the bar widget, let's get the material, so the dynamic material, and set scalar parameter value again. Like we did before, we will have to select the parameter name. Index will be the positive of our breakStatLerp up here. And for false, we will type in %right. Then for true, %left, basically the other way around like we did it in our event before. And for the value here, let's show the displayed and current value, because we want to divide our displayed value and our max value, sorry, not the current value, and we want to divide our displayed value, float divided by float, by our max value converted to a float. And this will be the new value of our %right or left. After we did that, let's call updateStat, and afterwards return, then connect the stat from the input node to our updateStat. I know this is a bit of complicated math. Feel free to pause the video and try to go through the code and try to get what it actually means. Also, if you have any questions to how it works, please feel free to ask that in the comments or in the Discord channel that I just made a video about today. Okay, so when we got that working, go to the event graph and we will call StatLerpTick for all of the update wires of the timelines. So HP timeline will StatLerpTick health, copy that, paste it for the mana timeline, where it will tick for mana, and do the same thing for experience. So experience, if you want to, you can add a comment box around that. I'll just do that later. Only thing that we now have to do is go to modify stat and do the true path of our branch. So let's remove the return node. Let's get the local stat and get stat. Then break it up here. Just expand that and we will see what we will need. And now we want to use a clamp function, clamp integer. The value will be the local by. Minimum will be our current value multiplied, integer times -1 or -1. Plug that in for min. And maximum will be the maximum value minus the current value. Plug that in for the max, the clamp node. Then off of the return value we will search for absolute, convert that to a float afterwards, then divide it by our maximum value to float. And we will promote that to a local variable called local lerp alpha. Connect that to the true path where we set this. Right. We will go down here and copy over the set members, set value and handle regeneration node. Copy that, paste it. But here we only want to set the current value, so remove all other pins and plug in the current value from the return value of the clamp down here. Then set value and handle regeneration, but also we want to copy over the local get stat for the struct ref here and connect the local stat to the stat of set stat value as well as handle regeneration. Then call lerp stat display. Stat will be the local stat. For the lerp time, drag in the local lerp alpha and search for lerp, but connect this as the alpha, not as the A. A will be the minimum lerp time of our stat, and B obviously the maximum lerp time value then. Connect that as the lerp time. And for positive, let's just get the local by and check whether that's greater than 0. Plug that in. After we do that, let's return. That's everything we need. Now we only need to go to our event graph and tell our plus and minus keys to modify the stat which should be animated. Pile, save, and play. So if I hit minus, you can see that little animation going on here. If I hit plus, it works the same way. And let me also show you that if we modify our value to something really high, that the animation will play a lot slower. So if I hit plus now, that also works. Then if we change the stat here, for example to mana, let's see whether that is working. So I can hit minus and that works. And finally we need to check the experience. So if I hit plus, that's working just fine. Okay, if you don't like, for example, the duration it takes to lerp between certain values, only thing to do is go into your stats, for example health, and let's say the minimum lerp time should be 2 seconds, maximum lerp time 5 seconds. And if we then modify our health stat by, let's say, 50 again, you will see that this will now take a lot more time. Alright, that's it for implementing both regeneration and stat animations. I hope you liked this video and I will see you in the next one.